Hi there, welcome to video number 3 of my series looking at how I'm going to use my X-Touch Mini with X's and O's, almost as if it's in this Mackie mode, but staying in the normal standard MIDI mode of the device. So it gives me more panels, more layers than just the A and the B that's available to me, so I can program more complex aircraft. Now, I'm not going to do stuff here that's actually specific to one particular aircraft, but I will use the King Air as my example because it's the one I'm working on at the moment. But everything I do here is really, the concept is translatable to other aircraft. I'm not going to dig too deep into how you program this. I'll do that as a later set of videos for people who want to explore this particular aircraft and the methods I use to use that. But even those methods are transferable, the concepts behind them. But as you can see, I'm using it as sort of a pre-GPS model. This is a weather radar, and it's mostly there because that's how you interface with the system that Black Square have created, so that you can have failures and repair things. But it's pretty much old comms radios and VORs that we'll be working with here. And this RNAV system, which is again not GPS, it's a more sophisticated VOR based system. That's what I'm exploring with this aircraft. Anyway, as you can see, plenty of dials and switches. Most of the switches are going to be controlled by my Stream Deck, so it doesn't impact on my X-Touch particularly. In fact, one of those are going to be duplicated on both so that I can access them in either device. It's the rotaries that's my limiting factor, because there are 8 rotaries on the X-Touch and it doubles up to 16 if you use the layer A and layer B. But as we look around the aircraft, even just looking at the overhead panel, we've got it's really hard to take screenshots showing black rotaries on a black background, but there you are. But here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's already 10 rotaries here, plus this is going to work as a rotary. This is a metering system that looks at the different power buses that are available to us. So we're already pretty well exceeding the number of rotaries available to us. This is the pilot panel. Again, there are a couple of rotaries here that I want to use, but not many. There's some air vents down here. These pull out and push back in to control the environment, the airflow. And they work quite well with rotaries as well. Let's switch over to the center panel where the comms are, and you've got a number of them, these stacked rotaries that this does the volume and the mode. This one does the kilohertz and the megahertz. And essentially I want to use one rotary to emulate each of those. But yeah, we are using them all up quite rapidly here. I'm not going to deal with this at all. I haven't got anywhere near looking at this. These are pretty well set as I want them to be, and it's not too difficult to click on these. Maybe later on I'll put them in, but I use them so infrequently. I'm not really that worried about them. Copilot side, at the bottom right hand side of the Copilot, we've got some environment controls about cabin temperatures and the mode that the heating cooling system's working in. There's another rotary here that's almost impossible to see, but it's about testing the fire extinguishers and the firewalls and that sort of thing. More controls for ventilation. And then down on the pedestal again, more rotaries to do with pressurization and another comms unit and another ADF unit. So plenty of rotaries that need emulating. So let's just work on the rotaries. That's our limiting factor. And I tried to sort of create different panels and group them together logically around the aircraft, and also in kind of priority order, or the order that I'm going to need them as I start to use the aircraft. So you're going to use the overhead panel pretty much as your first port of call, because you'll be looking up there looking at the meters and turning on various lights and things like that. So I'm not talking about the buttons that are underneath or on the X-Touch. I'm just looking at the rotaries and how I'm going to use those. And of course, each rotary has a button, acts as a button as well as a rotation. And as I said, we haven't got enough even to deal rotaries, even just to deal with the overhead panel. So we have to do a bit of doubling up. So the first one alone will do its windscreen wipers and change the speed and that kind of thing. This one here will do the floodlights, and it will toggle between doing the pilots and the co-pilots floodlights. This one here will do their flight instruments, again switching between the pilot and the co-pilots. The two different ways of lighting up, either backlighting or front lighting the panels. Avionics doesn't have any toggle to it, it just does the avionics panel. This is the overhead, the pedestal sub panel, or the side panels where the circuit breakers are. The co-pilot's gyro, and I can't remember what I was toggling that with. Looking at that now, I've forgotten quite what that does. I have to go and look at that. And this one here, it looks at the meter, and we need to press a button so that it reads the battery rather than the live AC and DC buses. And if we work down through the panels, the next panel will be dealing with the COM one, the nav one, ADF, and the transponder. Again, we've got these stacked volume and mode that we need to toggle between. The megahertz and the kilohertz that we're going to toggle between. So each one of those got the same kind of setup. This one here is marginally different. Not only do we need to toggle between doing the large numbers, the hundreds and the tens and the units, but occasionally we need to add a decimal 0.5 to the end of our frequency. So holding it down as a long press will give us an additional 0.5. And the transponder, basically, if I press that button there, it turns on ident mode. So this is all pressing the rotary. These aren't the soft buttons, these are the rotaries that also act as switches as well. Panel 3 is the right hand side of the radio stack. So it's comms 2, nav 2. ADF2, well, ADF2 is actually not in that stack, it's down on the pedestal. And as I'm beginning to fly the aircraft, I'm beginning to wonder about moving that away, because I don't use the ADF too often, ADF2, so I might move it to a lower priority panel, but that's something I'll deal with later. And this thing called the nav system, where it creates virtual points. You don't have to actually fly direct to a VOR. You can move a VOR virtually to where you want it to be. It's a really good, interesting pre-GPS system. But again, we need to do some toggling to make this work, to change what the rotaries do. Panel 4 is sort of like the environment stuff. This is where we're going to change the cabin pressure and the cabin temperature, testing the fire. So it's don't use it very often. So it's a lower priority panel, and the very lowest priority panel is setting the airflow. You occasionally go in and adjust that, so we don't use those very often. So that's what we're going to try and set up. So if we just look at one rotary, just go down this left-hand rotary, it's going to do one job in panel 1, one job in panel 2, panel 3, panel 4, panel 5. In fact, it's doing more than one job here. So we need to write some scripts. We need a structure for our scripts to make this work. So the first thing we need to be able to do is to change the panels. We need to be able to go from one panel to another. And we need to know which panel we're working with. So really, we need to create our own local variable to store the panel. And I call it my panel index, my panel IDX. It's an LVAR, a local variable. You can create those as you like. You don't have to declare them or anything like that. You just start using them, and if it hasn't got one, it makes one. but they start with 0 by default. So as soon as you create it, it's going to be panel 0. It'll label it panel 0. Now I've called it panel 1, panel 2. So although we've got 5 panels, the index will number them 0 to 4. You get used to it, is best I can say, really. Perhaps I should have started off calling them panel 0, panel 1, panel 2, but you live and learn. I've got 2 methods that I'm using to change the panels. The first method is just creating some buttons on my Stream Deck so that when I press that button, it goes directly to my required panel. So I've created 5 buttons on a particular profile that I use. And as soon as I press save, I press this button here, it looks like this. It writes a 0 into the variable. And so that from there, then it knows I'm using panel 0. If I wanted to go to this panel here, exactly the same idea. It's an event button from the Lorbe's X's and O's addition to the plugin on the Stream Deck. Press that, and it writes a 3 into the panel index. That's 0, 1, 2, 3. So you can work out for yourself what is behind these buttons here, and that works fine, except sometimes that I'm not on that page on my Stream Deck, and it means I've got to sort of fiddle around and get back to the right page to use them. So I've created a second method because these are all actually on my Xtouch. I've created a method on the Xtouch, so I don't have to go to the Stream Deck to do this. And what I do is I use the slider on the Xtouch so that when I push the slider up, it steps through from 0 to 1 to 2, works its way up. Or if I pull the slider down, it goes back down the layers. So on the slider, I've got 2 scripts, one for when I push the slider up and one for when I push it down. And this is what my script looks like. This is my increase script. This is the actual script. So it looks at that variable and compares it to 4 because that's the highest number it's allowed to go to. And so long as it's less than 4, I can add 1 to it and write it back into the variable. If it's got to 4 already, it can't add any more, so that's it. Limits it to 4. And the decrease version is pretty much the same idea. Check that we are actually above 0. If I am, I can subtract 1 and write it back in. So it can only get as far as 0, can't go any further down than 0. So that's my 2 scripts that I've got for sliding up and down through the layers. So on my in X's and O's, it's the normal method of assigning it. You just push the slider up, it detects it, and then you click on button here and find the script that you've written and link to it. And on this one here, it's the same place, but it's the turn left version, which is pushing that slider downwards and tell it to go find that script that you saved. Okay. So we need to write some scripts for each of the rotaries. So for each rotary, you're going to need 2 scripts, one for the clockwise and one for the anti-clockwise. And all I do is let's focus in on the rotary 1. We know what it does, we define what it does, and we define what it does on each layer in our planning. And obviously you've got a decrease and an increase, and they're mirror images of each other. So the script is pretty simple. If I turn it anti-clockwise, I want it to go down and work out which layer I'm on and do whatever's required for that layer. If I write that in pseudo script, it's not the actual script, but I think it's clear to see that as soon as you turn it anti-clockwise, it calls that script and it runs down here and it works out what layer I'm on. If it's a simple instruction, you can just tell it to do that simple instruction, but most of them are a little bit more complex, so it will call another script that you've written. It could be windscreen wiper decrease, or the change the is it the volume or the mode? We'll come to that in a second. But that's the basic structure. It's just a list of if statements, and if you have to have a layer 5, you create another one, and obviously your panel index has to be allowed to go up to 5, and just add another line in. If there isn't anything allocated to a particular rotary, say at panel 2, don't put anything in for panel 2. That's as simple as that. So obviously we have a mirror image 1 for the clockwise, and it will be the increased versions of the same. So it's all about this volume mode, or if it's another button, it might be, do I do megahertz, do I do kilohertz? So we need some way of knowing what mode it's in and changing the mode, which would be a variable. So the rotary 1 toggle will have a variable. Now you could do it with a different variable for each layer and for each rotary. It means creating like 40 different variables. That's totally possible. A more efficient way of doing it is to use an array. One array for each of the rotaries. So you'll need 8 arrays to do this. Arrays are relatively simple. It's like a variable, but with a number of slots in that you can use. So it's a table essentially. So an array is a table of values. All to do with this one's all to do with rotary 1, and we index our way down with another number, and the number is going to come from the panel IDX. And what we do is that we look at what's in here already, and if it's a 0 that's in this box, we change it to 1 and put the 1 back in place. If it's a 1 that's there when we press the button, flip it over to 0 and write it back in here. Now some of them do need a value in here because you need to know whether it's going to be changing the volume or the mode or the megahertz or the kilohertz, and sometimes it doesn't need it, but it doesn't do any harm that there's a number in here. We're just not going to use it. So it makes the script pretty simple that we want to write. And this is the script that works for all of the numbers along here. This is the actual code. It tells it's a number array. We name it, so we called it rotary 1 toggle. And this is the naming of it. It hasn't been declared anywhere else. It's just as soon as you use it, it makes it. Using this as its index, so we're going to go along down here to find which layer we're on and get to that value, find out what's in the box. That inverts it. If it's 1, it turns it to 0, or vice versa. And then this is where to put it. We're going to set it back into the rotary 1 toggle variable, and in this place here, this is the same place it got it from. It's going to put it back there, but it will have been changed, and that's it. So we don't need to write a different one for different layers. It's dynamic. It's working out the layers for itself, and it doesn't. It means it will do this job even if we're on a layer that doesn't need the value, but it doesn't do any harm. So that's the only line of script we're going to need for rotary 1 at the moment. There's a little extra coming where we can do other little tricks with it. But just writing that, copy and pasting it for rotary 2, rotary 3, rotary 4, very quick to build the structure for 8 rotaries. Okay, so using the array, this is what it's going to look like. These are the ones that have got the 0s or 1s in them. And we've seen this, we saw this before, that it goes down here, and say we were trying to do the COM1 radio and we wanted to switch it on and then change the volume. That'll be this one here, if we wanted to decrease it. When you call that script, it will check the value that's in here, and if it's still 0, do whatever it is that will decrease the mode. Now, again, you could perhaps write the code straight into here, or call a function, call a script to make that happen. It depends on how complex it is. If it's not 0, it must be something else. The only something else it can be is a 1. And so then it will say that if it's a 1, it's the volume you want to change. If it's 0, it's the mode you're trying to change. So this one here, the first fork is which layer are we on and what shall I do? This one here, the second fork is it mode or is it volume that I'm changing? And that's it. That's the structure for it, basically. A couple of other things that we want to do. Occasionally, we don't want to use the pressing the rotary to do to do the toggle to change a value. We would like it to actually send a message to make it something happen. So all we do is we've already got, this is rotary 7, we've already got rotary 7 set up. So when I'm on this layer here, it will change that value. But it said does no harm, I'm not going to use it, but we want to put in the line that says if the index is 1, do whatever it is you need to do, call the routine or change variable that will turn the ident on. So we just add in one extra line on that toggle script for any layer that's got a straightforward function that isn't a toggle. And then for the last one here, I've got this long press that I need to do. And the only way around that is to have, if it's needed for that button, is to write one other script. And just add into that, it says, I've called the script the rotary 6 long, like, because it's a long press. And you can see that if I do a short click, it's just going to trigger the normal rotary toggle script, which may or may not have some additions for different layers, for if I want the short click to do something different other than toggle. But also it will trigger a different script for long. And in fact, this button here, because this is on panel 2 is the ADF1, and on panel 3 it's the ADF2. It's got 2 lines of script. So if I do a long press on there, calls the long script, and if I'm in layer 1 or index 1, I'm going to change decimal increase for ADF1, and if I'm on layer 2, do it for the ADF2. So I hope that makes sense. So yeah, with the buttons, pressing the buttons, using them as buttons, the rotors are definitely going to need a script for turning anti-clockwise, definitely one for turning clockwise, definitely one that toggles the buttons, because they nearly all need toggles, and occasionally I'm going to need a 4th script for that particular rotary if there's a long press involved. Let's have a quick look at the actual soft buttons that are on there, the 16 soft buttons. And again, all I've done is I've gone through and tried to make them match up with the rotaries, so they've all got a theme to them. These are the overhead buttons and switches I use frequently. So turning the master lights on, the fasten safety seatbelts lights. This is on the glare shield. The panel 2 is all about comms. So again, these have got 2 functions to them. Whether to do a transfer or whether to change the memory channel that I'm using to store the various frequencies. So I've got a short click and a long click, a short click and a long click for all of these buttons here. Same idea going here with the comms 2. The nav system, it's either controlled by the two rotaries or a number of buttons here on the lower layer. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but you can see basically how it works. But the interesting thing is I don't need to store a variable for them. That none of them are actually toggles, or if they are, they're toggling a condition of a switch, and that variable is stored in the sim. So if I do need to know it, I can get it directly from the sim. I don't need to create that script myself for the buttons. I just go and get them from the sim itself. So that makes the soft buttons a bit easier to work with. So for each button, same process. We go down and we create a script for the button, which again is just a series of if statements. If I'm in panel 0, that means I'm working with the master panel lights. If I'm in level 1, I'm going to store something, store a value in. This is the comms 1 radio, this is the comms 2 radio. If it's down on the pedestal, I'm in 3. When I press that button, it's going to do the passenger oxygen. If I'm on 4, it's going to turn on, in fact, it's turning on a coffee machine, is what it's doing. And I have a script for this button here, but that's called, if it's a long press, so I've got the long click switched on here, so that gives me this button here, so that I've got a long click for layer 1, which is here. This is the comms 1, and it changes the spacing mode. When you change the kilohertz, it changes how far each turn changes the kilohertz, and it does the same for comms radio 2 as well. There isn't anything for 3, so there's nothing for 0, nothing for 3. For 4, it turns the coffee machine off, so this one turns it up and this one switches it down. That's pretty much how that one works. So that's how the buttons work. The buttons you just need a script for each of the buttons. There's 16 scripts to write, and there's just a whole bunch of if statements all the way down. If there's no function at a particular level, don't put it in. Like I've left out 0 and I've left out 3. They just don't exist there. Okay, so that's about it. Quite sure why that's saying that, but there we are. I have to go and look at that. Did not spotted that one before, but that's what I've done here. So that's how the buttons all work. Next thing I need to should be able to show you in the next video is how I use the LEDs on the X-Touch, so that it shows me as I move from mode to mode, which mode I'm in, which panel I'm in, and the mode that the rotor has been left in, and also how I know what each button and each rotary does, labeling them, and a dynamic system for labeling them so you can see them. Okay, so that'll be my next video.